Well, thanks for having me here today. I do speak a little bit of German, but I'm not going to try to do this talk in German, just stick to English. As Stefan already said, my name is Mariëlle Prevoo. I am currently working as the department manager for research support and development at our university library, and also the chief open science for Maastricht University. And what that means, we'll get to that later in the presentation. We'll have plenty of time for questions by the end of the presentation, but if any questions pop up during the presentation, then don't hesitate to just raise your hand, and we will, so that we can address it immediately, and you don't have to save your questions till the end. So what I will share with you today is all about what we call the open science tree at Maastricht University. We felt that a tree really reflects what open science is, because it has a lot of branches. And branches where, for some of them, you would even think, oh, is this also part of that same concept? So to show the fact that they are all related and that they also all need the same steady stem and roots, that is why we visualize it as a tree. And we will address all three parts of the tree, so the roots, the stem, but also how we make it bloom. But before I start talking a lot, I would actually like to find out a bit more about what you already know about open science. And I would like to use WooClap for that. You can go to WooClap either on your laptop or on your mobile device, and then use the event code libscitalk. And what I would like to ask you is, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about open science? See, open access and open data. Community. It's nice to see that word pop up so soon as well, because it's often not the first thing that people think of. Open data. Everyone without barrier. That's probably one expression that is split up in the cloud, but publishing, yes. So definitely all topics that we consider as part of our open science tree, and that we will also address today. And then my next question would be, since this is a library science talk, in which open science themes do you think the library can play a role? And please note that you can check more than one box for this question. So open access and open educational resources, we all agree that the library has a role in that, but we are maybe a little bit less sure about public engagement and fair data use, even less about fair software and recognition and rewards, and pre-registration is left completely open. If I may ask, is that because this is a topic unknown to you, or because you think, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, it's better to find that out now at the beginning of the talk. So pre-registration is actually registering the hypothesis of research. And the fact that we consider it part of open science doesn't mean that you are sharing those hypotheses openly from the beginning, but you register them, they get a timestamp, and you can then refer back to that in a publication. Some journals even require that you do that. And it enables a researcher to make a distinction between confirmatory and exploratory research. So, and it's obviously to increase transparency and to prevent what we call harking, hypothesizing after the results are known. So you can really make the distinction of what you were planning to test, that is also actually what you tested. And then even if you find other things, that's not a problem, but you can make clear what was your initial hypothesis. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, you will find out that the library can play a role in all of these open science themes. So as I already mentioned, we visualize open science at our university as a tree. And this tree has 7 branches. So that's open access, something that we already agreed upon, that the library plays a role there. It's public engagement, fair data use, recognition and rewards, fair software, open educational resources, and pre-registration. So to start with the roots of the tree, why would we even want to move towards more open science? If we look at the definitions of open science of UNESCO and the national program Open Science, the Dutch national program, then we can distill 2 core values from that. And those are also 2 core values that really form the roots of the tree, so that we always have to think back, okay, does this improve transparency? And or does it improve impact? And if we talk about impact, we're talking about both academic and societal impact. So although there is this movement of measuring academic impact differently, it doesn't mean that it's not important anymore. We're just using different indicators for it. And of course, the tree is rooted in a wider open science landscape. For the situation at Maastricht University, that landscape consists of, at a national level, our national program Open Science, where there are certain priorities set and certain topics identified where it helps for universities to work together on that and to arrange it on a national level. All universities also work together in the universities of the Netherlands. SURF is an organization that provides IT solutions for higher education in the Netherlands. UKB is the collaboration of all university libraries and our Royal Library. And LCRDM is a collaboration specifically focused on research data management. So it's the National Coordination Point Research Data Management. On a European level, our university is part of JERUN, which is the Young European Research Universities, and UVE, Young Universities for the Future of Europe. And of course, we also are looking with very much interest to the European Open Science Clouds and things that are happening there. And then one particular thing that I would like to discuss from this open science landscape is the network of open science communities. So if we look at the map of the international network of open science and scholarship communities, then we see that there are communities in many places in the world, and more they are starting these communities. But there are 12 local communities in the Netherlands, meaning that each of the Dutch universities has an open science community at the moment. And I would like to give you a little bit more insight into that by letting the people from these communities sharing themselves what the communities are about. So I leave it at that for now. And as a library, we are also working very closely together with our local open science community. And I think the best example that I can give of that is the Open Science Festival that we organized last week in Maastricht, where we really managed to get a lot of people involved in exchanging ideas on open science and in also getting new people enthusiastic for open science. So part of the roots is obviously also what is the history of open science at UM. And obviously thinking about open science and working on open science started earlier than in 2019. Because if they wouldn't have started thinking about this, they wouldn't hire me as an open science officer in early 2019. But the first real step towards making it a university-wide thing came with the launch of the first open science policy in 2019. In that same year, our university also signed the DORA Declaration. Is that something that is familiar to you? I see everyone nodding. So it's the Declaration on Research Assessment, stating that individual research papers or individual researchers should no longer be, how do you say it? It should no longer be rewarded based on the journal level indicators. And actually, our university, just like all other Dutch universities, should adhere to this statement already a few years before 2019, because the universities of the Netherlands, as a collaborative organization, had already signed this DORA declaration. But our university said, no, we also want to sign it as a university to really make clear that this is not just something that exists on paper, but that we really want to work like this. Then, as also a result of this first policy and the actions we took from it, Maastricht Open Science Community started in 2020. So it is a bottom-up initiative, but we have really fostered them in starting this initiative, both in practical support as well as also financial support as a library, because we think it is very important to have these people that are directly related to the work floor, to have them on board in the initiatives that we take. So they give us both requested as well as unsolicited advice on all kinds of initiatives that we take. And we, as I said, we work closely together. Then in the strategic program of our university that has the time span from 2022 to 2026, there is this vision of a research culture in which open science is the norm. Well, if you want to make open science the norm, then it's no longer enough to think, oh, we have an open science community where there are people that are enthusiastic about this topic, so they can work like that, and we support them, and we leave it at that. Now, if it should become the norm, then you should really enable everyone to work like this. And that is also why we came up with a new open science policy, which is not only an update of the previous policy, but also an expansion, as it now incorporates all phases of the research cycle. So where the 2019 policy was mainly about how to share your output, so about this last phase, we are now incorporating all phases of the research cycle, and I will illustrate that a bit more later on. Then looking at the stem of the tree, it is very important to have open science represented at all levels in our university. So don't worry, I'm not going to explain our whole organogram to you. I just want to show you how we have it represented at all these levels. So first of all, the executive level, by making it explicit that it's part of the portfolio of our Rector Magnificus. Then the level of our Maastricht University office, where there's a policy advisor at academic affairs that has this also in his portfolio. And the UM Open Science policy also came about in close collaboration between the library and academic affairs. For a representation of the faculties and schools, there is a professor that is as a standard bearer. And there are ambassadors of each faculty in our open science community. Now you may wonder, what is the difference between this professor as a standard bearer and the ambassadors? So the professor really takes a role of being the face of open science for the whole community, and also has a closer connection to the to other professors and to, for example, the Board of Deans than the open science community has, because they are again the connection to the work floor. In the university library, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the Chief Open Science, which means that I am representing Maastricht University in this network of Chiefs of Open Science from all Dutch universities. And that is where we discuss these topics where we think it works better to arrange it on a national level. So think about things like infrastructure, for example, or the open access arrangements. Then we have an open science officer who is overlooking the open science activities within our university. And currently, for example, very busy with supporting and monitoring the faculty action plans of all of the faculties. And then we have the expertise and support that we offer on specific topics. So for scholarly communication, we have a team. For research data management, our team for the current research information system is also involved in open science, mainly in two ways. On the one hand, because of the repository function that this system also has. So for green open access, this system can be used to make the works available, but also for monitoring and presenting open science activities, because each researcher can enter all different types of output into the system and also show the open access status of it. The research intelligence team is involved in monitoring, both on the unit level, so for faculties or schools, as well as on the individual level. And for open science in education, which is more than just open educational resources, we are currently in the process of hiring a new colleague to make sure that we also give that topic the dedicated attention that it deserves. For citizen science, which is also a relatively new topic, we also have someone dedicated working on that topic. And we have 3 departments in our library, and you would maybe think that everything open science comes from the research support department. Well, that is not the case. So the first 4 teams here are within the research support department, but open science and education is embedded within our education, content and support department, and citizen science within the library locations and services department. So that means that all our departments play their role in making open science the norm. And then for this whole time span until 2026, we have set some open science encompassing actions. You could say these will be like the growth rings of our tree. So this year we are mainly working on improving the monitoring, because if we look at what we currently do in terms of monitoring, that is mainly open access monitoring. But we would like to monitor also other types of open science activities, and ideally also monitor the effect on impact and transparency, because again, that is why we are doing this. We're not doing this just to show, hey, I'm open, but we're doing it for a reason. And we are revising the Research Data Management Code of Conduct, because that code stems from 2014, so it's no surprise that it's no longer in line with the ideas of open science. For next year, we plan to focus on guidelines on the legal aspects. That doesn't mean we completely ignore the legal aspects at the moment, but at the moment this happens really at an ad hoc basis. So someone approaches our scholarly communication team with a question on licensing, and they will then, when necessary, approach the colleagues in the legal department and provide the person with advice. And we would like to get to a set of guidelines where only the more complex cases end up on the desk of the scholarly communication team. And for the others, we would have clear guidelines or something like frequently asked questions that people could find their way in themselves. We also want to embed open science in the onboarding of new staff, and that is for both support staff as well as academic staff. Again, if you want to be an organization where open science is the norm, then if someone new starts in your organization, then that person should also know about this. Where we also want to embed it is in education. I already mentioned that we are currently in the process of hiring someone for open science and education. So because we see students, bachelor and master students, as future scientists, we think it would be good to have this embedded in their education, we're not planning on adding something to the existing program, but rather on looking at the existing curriculum, what is in there and what is it in line with the ideas of open science? Maybe sometimes it is already in line, but it's just not called that way. Or should we change something there so that it is more in line with this ideal? Our webpage is a one-stop shop. That is actually a goal that we already had, and we have a webpage, but we want to make this more known and to really make that the place where people go to if they want to know anything about open science. And then ultimately in 2026, we would like to promote and monitor circular science. So this idea of, okay, someone shares a data set or a publication, and when I start a new project, rather than starting immediately to plan data collection, I would first look at what is already there. What did someone else do that is being shared that I can maybe use for this project so that it is being reused in this circular sense. And then I would like to zoom in on a specific example for open science and education, because I was telling you what we are planning to do, but there's one thing that we have already done in terms of embedding open science in education, and that is in our education for all our PhD students, because they are following these basic courses in their first year on research integrity and ethics, on open science, and on science communication. So open science is really an important part of that, enabling us to say, okay, if you leave Maastricht University with a PhD degree, then you have, no matter what your discipline is, but you have this basic set of knowledge and skills about open science. Now, trying to implement a policy university-wide in a university that has a lot of different faculties and thus also a lot of different disciplines it brings along some challenges. To stick to the analogy of the tree, you could say we want to make it bloom on different types of soil. So one of the things how we manage to do that is to stick to this motto of as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So open science doesn't mean everything should be open. No, it means you should consider how open you can make things. And if the highest level of open that you can reach is open on request, well, that's fine if you have good reasons for not making it fully open. Then the term science, that is something that not all disciplines recognize themselves equally in. So we explicitly stated in our policy that with science, we don't only mean the natural sciences or sciences related to that, but all fields or disciplines are targeted in our policy. And you maybe noticed it in the video from the open science communities, where they said open science or scholarship communities. So in some other countries, this choice has been made to rename it to open scholarship. We decided to stick with what is already common language at a national level. So we call it open science, but make it explicit that it includes all fields. And another important way of acknowledging the disciplinary differences is asking each faculty to come up with a faculty action plan. And in these faculty action plans, we ask the faculties to make their needs known in terms of which communication channels should we use, at which level are we even starting if we want to get all their academics along in this process. Is a certain topic relevant in this faculty? You could think of something like preregistration is maybe very relevant in the Faculty of Psychology, but a lot less in arts and social sciences. So that is a process that we are currently in, as the faculties will soon have their so-called spring meetings with the executive board. And as a preparation for that, one of the things they have to come up with are these faculty action plans. And then we will get to the challenge of searching for common denominators in those plans and see where we can centralize things or where we should tailor to the needs of different faculties. So just as a recap, we have these 7 branches of the tree, and what I want to do now in the final part of my presentation is zooming in on each of these branches to share with you what we are doing there. There are quite some links also in the next slides. I will not click through on all of them. You can do that for yourself at a later point if you're interested, or ask me to click through if you think it would be nice to look at it together now. So I mentioned it before, what is really new about the 2022 policy versus the one from 2019 is that we are promoting open science throughout the research cycle. And if you try to plot all the branches of the tree on the research cycle, then you see that some of them are more relevant in the early phases, whereas others are more relevant in the later phases. So recognition and rewards is one of the branches of our tree that is definitely an important part of our open science policy and also an important stimulus for open science, but it is not part of our policy because it's a national program in itself. But we do need this program because only if the open science initiatives are really stimulated, then the academics will feel the incentive to work this way and not just do it from intrinsic motivation because they are enthusiastic about the idea, but just know that the extra time it may sometimes cost them is also rewarded. For open access, we have an open access portal. So that is one spot where all support on this topic is brought together online. We have on a national level, but sometimes also on a university or even faculty level, read and publish deals, meaning that the initial subscriptions to get access to journals are now turned into these types of deals, which allow researchers to publish open access in those journals without costs or with reduced costs. And information about these deals and about other open science aspects, open access aspects of publishing in those journals, our researchers can find via the journal browser. So they enter the name of a specific journal and they can see not only if there's a discount or maybe even they can publish open access without cost, but also what are the requirements for doing green open access? What is the embargo period, for example, for a specific journal? We also, in addition to providing these deals and trying to enable gold open access, we promote green open access, and that includes the so-called Taverne Amendment, which is an amendment in the Dutch law that allows authors to share short pieces of work after a reasonable amount of time. And in this, in a national project, this reasonable amount of time has been set to 6 months. Also, legal aspects have been checked off, and so far it has never led to a case with one of the publishers. So this will allow the authors to share the published version of their publication. So not what they would normally do in green open access, sharing the author-accepted manuscript. So what we are also doing at the moment is a pilot for open access books. And that consists of 2 parts. There's a fund where researchers can apply if they are planning on publishing a book with a publisher to cover part of the open access costs. And we have our own Maastricht University press, which so far we have seen that it is also very interesting for open educational resources, so turning textbooks into open access books. We are on a national level also looking into new arrangement types for gold and diamond open access. So of course the read and publish deals are also about gold open access, but that's with hybrid publishers or hybrid journals. Full gold journals are not so much yet journals that we have deals with. So that is something for the future. And also we want to increase the awareness on the one hand on funder requirements, because too often it happens that people find out too late that their funder requires them to publish in a specific type of journal or to make their publication available open access, and then they have already submitted it somewhere where it's not possible, for example, to publish open access. But on the other hand, we also want to make them aware of funding opportunities. So when you're drawing up the budget in your research proposals, think ahead. Like if you have to publish open access, then often you can also include this in the budget of your project. For public engagement, as I said, a relatively new theme, especially if we look at the library support on that theme. As a library, we have decided to use our special collections as a use case for this topic, because the special collections is something where already interaction with the community, with the outside world was happening. So what if we use those connections to then enable researchers to also easier connect with people from the community? What we have asked the faculties to do in their faculty action plans is to explore best practices, existing connections, and needs for support. Because we feel like at the moment, a lot of those existing connections are set up for a specific project and then die out again. And we think that is a pity, because if you could make those people feel part of a community of citizens interested in being involved in science, then maybe for our next project, someone could make use of that pool of interested people and have them involved in their project as well. What we also would like to do, based on the input from the faculty action plans, is formulate guidelines on types of research for which public engagement is recommended, so that also for this topic, it's no longer only dependent on individual ideas or preferences, but that it's clear that if you conduct research in a specific field or on a specific topic or specific types of research, that it is expected from you that you engage the public from an early phase onwards. A nice example project here is Worlds of Wonder, where the public was engaged in coding ancient drawings of microscopes. And this was done via a platform called Zooniverse. And the link that we have here leads to our quiz system, which then also shows you nicely how this system can be used by researchers to present a project in a coherent way with all the output that is related to the project. For fair data use, again, we have a dedicated portal. Every faculty has their own data steward. So these are colleagues that are working within the research data management team in the library, but they are also linked to a specific faculty and spend 2 days in their week working for that faculty, giving advice, which can be on an individual level for data management plans, but also on a more policy level for how to go about in the faculty to promote research data management and fair data use. We have an RDM experts community where academic as well as support staff come together that are involved in research data management. And we plan to work on the further integration of service domains. So these service domains are the data stewardship services that come from the library. Then we have data brokership, data infrastructure, and data sciences services. And obviously, the better they are integrated, the clearer it is for the researcher that that it is one system that is all working together, and they don't have to go to different places for different aspects of their data management. Another way in which we want to reach that ideal, the researcher not having to do things multiple times or to go to multiple places, is through the Research Project Services platform, which is a platform that is currently under development, where ideally a researcher would register their project once and get an identifier for the project, and then go through all the steps like a research data management plan, ethical approval, but also reporting back to the funder, for example, within one platform, not having to enter the details about their project in slightly different forms for all of these different things, but just doing that one time, the information is there, and you follow the steps that come along the way. Fair software is also a newer theme, although it depends a little bit on the discipline how new it is. There again, we ask the faculties to identify where there are gaps in awareness, knowledge, or support. And a gap that we can already tell that is there for some faculties is that they think they don't have software. Whereas certain code that is used for doing statistical analysis, you could also consider that software. I mean, if you're working in computer sciences, then it's obvious that you have software. But we need to get the people more aware that in addition to the FAIR data, also think about what you have done to analyze those data or to process the raw data to get to a different data set. Based on that input from the faculties, we then want to adapt our services and tooling and centralize where possible or desirable. We have a GitLab instance as a university, but at the moment that's mainly used by our IT support staff and not so much by researchers. So we want to promote that as a tool for versioning. We think that all data stewards would require some basic skills on this level. So at the moment, it's more kind of a specialization of some of our data stewards, but we would like to have all of them to have some basic skills there, and to make software management part of the research data management plan. For pre-registration, again, an inventory of current practices is asked from the faculties. This is also a topic where we think some basic skills would come in handy for all of our data stewards. And then again, we hope to get to guidelines on which types of research pre-registration is recommended for, so that it's not an individual choice, but that it's something that it's clear if this is expected from you or not. And also guidelines on where or where not and how to pre-register. And then there's a big question mark after the data processing agreements. We do want to look into this because some of those platforms where you can pre-register also allow you to later on in the process store your data. Now, if it turns out that from the inventory of current practices, a lot of people, once they pre-register on this platform, also use it for storing their data, then we may need data processing agreements, or we need awareness with our researchers that the platform is fine for pre-registration, but not for storing their data. Then finally, open educational resources, which may be a bit surprising that this is under the open science tree. We do see that more universities struggle with this, like do we include it or not, because often on the organizational level, there's this distinction between education and research. But if we look at academics working in our universities, then it's very often someone doing research is also teaching. So a large part of this group is just the same target group. So we did choose to include it under the open science policy, but that does mean that we had to check our policy when it was in the making with different stakeholders in our university, because by including this topic, we broadened the number of stakeholders involved. We use a broad definition here, so this to us also includes the use of open access publications in education. The faculties will investigate the current use of open educational resources and also report on that in the faculty action plans. And then as a library, we would like to ultimately offer an open educational resources collection. So that requires a little bit different way of thinking. Like at the moment, it is clear what we have in our collection is what we subscribe to or what is physically there on the stacks. But if you think about open educational resources, then it would still be nice if you could show that this is what our researchers from Maastricht University have been sharing. We want to do that via the EduSources platform. There's also some library staff development required here to really support the people properly in this. And then we want to stimulate not only the use of open educational resources, but also, of course, the reuse. So that's how we try to work on all the aspects of this tree. And then now there's plenty of time for you to ask questions. Thank you for your attention.